I am 75 years old, and I'm about to tell you something nobody wants to hear. When my mother turned 65, the government sent her a letter about Medicare. When her doctor asked how she was feeling, she said fine. But inside her chest, her heart was already beginning its slow decline. Women in America live to about 81 on average. But here's what they don't tell you. The last 10, 15, sometimes 20 years, those years are not what you think they are. They're not years of freedom and travel and finally doing all the things you deferred. They're years of managing medications, choosing between filling a prescription and fixing the roof, sitting in waiting rooms and waiting some more. I spent 40 years telling myself that retirement would fix everything. And I was poor the whole time, not because I didn't have money, but because I didn't have myself. Not yet. Let me take you back to when I was 50 years old, and still believed the story that everyone told me. The story that said, if you sacrifice now, if you put your head down and climb the ladder, if you ignore your body and your marriage and your friendships, if you fill out the spreadsheets and max out the 401k and catch yourself before you ask for a raise you deserve, then one day, you'll have enough. Enough to breathe, enough to rest, enough to finally live. I worked in corporate for 40 years. Started at 25 in an entry-level job, wore the same 3 blazers to every meeting, took my lunch at my desk most days, and told myself it was noble. Lean in, they said. Be assertive, they said. Don't ask for too much, they said, because women were still trying to prove they belonged. And I believed them all. My house had a crack in the foundation that I couldn't afford to fix. My husband brought it up once. He said, "Margaret, we should call someone." And I remember standing in the kitchen. It was a Sunday morning. The newspaper was on the table. And I said, "Not yet, not yet." The kids needed braces. My mother had a stroke and needed full-time care, and I took 3 months off work, unpaid. I sat with her in the physical therapy room, watching her try to lift a foam block, watching the words get stuck in her throat, and I thought, I should be here more. I should be here all the time, but I couldn't afford to be. So I went back to the cubicle, back to the meetings where nobody noticed I was there, back to putting money away, penny by penny, telling myself that one day this would mean something. At 61 years old, I inherited $40,000 from my aunt. I was shocked. I cried. I felt like I'd won the lottery, which tells you something about how tight things had been. My husband and I sat down with a financial advisor, a man in a suit who looked at my 401k and said, "You've been doing well, Margaret, very disciplined." And we made a move. A smart move, everyone said. We rolled some money into a diversified portfolio. We bought a small duplex in a neighborhood that was just starting to gentrify, rented out one side and lived in the other. I remember the day I got the first rent check. It was in an envelope, and I opened it sitting at my kitchen table, and I just stared at it. Passive income, real estate, wealth building. The language felt powerful, like I'd finally cracked the code, like I'd finally earned the right to relax. The spreadsheets looked beautiful. The net worth number climbed. I was 61, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I might actually make it. Like I might not die in debt. Like I might finally be rich. But here's what they don't show on the spreadsheet. You can't print out a balance sheet and frame what it cost you to get there. At 63, my husband had a back injury at work. He was a carpenter, and his company said, "You'll be fine. Get back in a few weeks." He wasn't fine. He couldn't work for 6 months, and the disability payments were a fraction of his regular wage. I remember lying next to him at night, feeling him wince when he rolled over, and thinking, "We'll be okay. We have savings." But the savings were meant for something else. For the future I'd been building. The rental property needed a new roof. My 401k felt like it was for emergencies only, but if I touched it before 59 and a half, there were penalties, taxes. It felt like stealing from my own future to live today. So we didn't take the vacation we'd been planning. We didn't fix the deck. We told our kids we couldn't afford to help with their down payments. And the whole time, the spreadsheets kept growing. The net worth climbed past 1 million. I would have said I was rich. I would have said I'd finally made it. But I was working 80 hours a week at 64 years old, so stressed that I stopped having my period because my body just gave up trying. I was skipping my mammogram appointments because I couldn't get out of work. My daughter's wedding was on a Saturday, and I brought my laptop. I checked email during the ceremony. My marriage had become this polite, distant transaction where we discussed bills and property taxes and which medication his insurance would cover, and we hadn't touched each other in so long that I couldn't remember what it felt like. And I told myself, just a few more years, just until I retire, then everything will change. Then I'll have time. Then I'll be happy. I retired at 65, right on schedule. The company threw a party. They gave me a plaque. I'd built a financial portfolio that would supposedly last me until I was 95. I had my Social Security mapped out. My Medicare was sorted, my IRAs were set up just right, and I'd done the math on when to do a Roth conversion, and honestly, I thought I was done. I thought I'd won. I remember the first morning waking up and not having anywhere to be. I felt lost. I filled the day with errands. I organized the garage. I color-coded the financial files. My husband asked if I wanted to take that trip to Italy we'd talked about for 30 years, and I said, maybe next year. Let's see how retirement feels first. Let's make sure our expenses are really what we think they are. Let's not be hasty, you know? I had spent so many years controlling every variable, I didn't know how to let myself spend freely. I didn't know how to just want something and take it. At 71, my best friend Jean had a stroke. She'd retired at 68 and also deferred. "I'm going to take that trip when I have more time," she'd said. And then one day she was in a hospital bed and I was holding her hand and she couldn't speak anymore. We'd talked once a month, quick check-ins between work, and now I'd never hear her laugh the same way again. She recovered, she can walk and speak now, but something is gone. I drove home from the hospital that night and pulled over at a rest stop. I sat in my car for an hour. The actuarial tables say I probably have another 10, maybe 12 good years. 12 years, and then things get harder. I could feel it in my knees. I knew my body. I knew what was coming. And here's the thing I want you to really hear. because this is the part I wish someone had said to me when I was 50, when I was 60, when I still thought there was time. When I'm dead, and I will be dead, statistically speaking, probably before I'm 87, I am not going to wish that my net worth had been higher. I am not going to regret the roof I didn't replace on the rental property, or the fact that I didn't max out my contribution to my IRA that year. I'm not going to lie there thinking, if only I had worked a few more hours. I'm not going to think about the spreadsheets. I'm going to think about Jean's laugh. I'm going to think about the morning my daughter got married and I brought my laptop into the church. I'm going to think about my husband's back and how I'd let him live in pain so that I could live in security. I'm going to think about the 40 years I spent building a future I was too tired to enjoy. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because I wish someone had said it to me. So at 71, I made a move. Not a financial move, a real move. I cashed out some of the passive income and I invested it in my life. Not all at once, not in a way that was reckless, but methodically, like I'd organized my portfolio. I sat down with a pen and paper. I still have it, actually, worn and dog-eared, sitting on my nightstand. And I did some math. Not the kind of math my financial advisor had taught me, the human kind. I wrote down my age at the top, 71. Then I looked up the actuarial tables. For a woman my age, the median life expectancy is about 83, 84. But I'm healthy. My parents both lived into their 90s. So let's say I have a real shot at 87, maybe even 90. That gives me, best case, 16 years. Let's be more conservative and say 12 good years, years where I can still travel, still get on a plane, still climb stairs, still be present with my grandchildren. 12 years. I wrote that down. 12 years. Then I calculated what I actually spent in a month. I took out a red pen and I crossed out everything I didn't value. The subscription services I wasn't using, the insurance we didn't need, the membership to the country club we never went to, the property tax on the vacation condo we'd kept but never used. That had become this anchor dragging us down. Then I took what I saved and I asked myself, what would I do with these 12 years if I knew they were the most valuable thing I owned? I took my daughter to Italy. We rented an apartment in Rome and walked every day. We sat in piazzas and drank wine at 4 in the afternoon. I took her hand one day, walking across the Ponte Vecchio, and I said, I should have done this 30 years ago. She cried. I sold the rental property. The calls from tenants, the repairs, the stress of being a landlord, I let it go. I kept the money diversified and let myself spend it. I hired someone to help my husband with his physical therapy at home 3 times a week. He doesn't wince anymore. My daughter brings my grandkids to visit once a month. I'm teaching them to bake. I'm teaching them the stories, the real ones. I'm teaching them what it looks like to be old and still learning. I revised my Medicare plan. I added a good Medigap policy, even though it cost more, because I realized that my health was not something to economize on. Part D covers my medications. I'm taking care of my body now the way I should have at 50, at 60, at 65. I go to all my doctor's appointments. I get my mammograms. I see the neurologist when something feels off. I don't skip things to save money, because the savings I'm making now are savings on time, and time is the only currency that actually matters. I'm not working anymore. I'm not climbing ladders. I'm not leaning in. I'm resting. I'm reading novels that have nothing to do with productivity. I'm sitting on my porch when it rains and not checking my phone. I'm calling my sister for no reason. I'm showing up to my grandkids' soccer games, and sometimes I cry just from the happiness of being there. Here's what I want you to understand. I did not become wealthy. I became something different. I became present. And if you're listening to this, and you're in your 40s, your 50s, even your early 60s, I want you to sit with this. I want you to go get a piece of paper. Write down your age. Then write down a realistic number of years you probably have left. Not total years, healthy years. Years where your body is still mostly cooperating with you. Now multiply that by 12. That's roughly how many months you have if you want to do this right. How many months to actually live. If you're 50 and you have a real shot at 85, that's probably 420 good months. What are you doing with them? Are you working 80 hours a week for a salary that's already more than you need? Are you telling yourself just one more year? Are you deferring the conversation with your spouse, the trip with your kids, the time with your parents while they're still here to remember it? Because I'm telling you, the money you're saving by sacrificing those months is not worth it. There is no net worth high enough. There is no 401k balance that makes it worth trading your actual life. I know because I have both. I have the money. And I'm telling you, the money is the smaller thing. This is what I wish I'd known at 60. Not at 71 when I had to learn it by almost losing my best friend. Not at 65 when I retired and had to retrain myself how to live. At 60, when I had 20 good years left, not 12. I wish I'd known that wealth is not a number. Wealth is time with people you love. Wealth is your body not in pain. Wealth is the freedom to not check your email while your daughter's getting married. Wealth is sitting on your porch in the rain and not feeling guilty about it. Wealth is knowing what you want and giving yourself permission to have it while you still can. The one move that made me wealthy was understanding that I'd been measuring the wrong thing the whole time. I wasn't poor because I didn't have enough money. I was poor because I didn't have myself. And I finally, at 71, gave myself back to me. I'm not saying don't save money. I'm not saying don't plan. I'm not saying be reckless with your retirement. What I'm saying is calculate your actual spendable years, not just your account balance. Ask yourself what you're sacrificing and whether the trade is actually worth it. Ask yourself if you're deferring your life, because you can't get those years back. You can't cash out your happiness at 60 and hope it compounds. You can't invest in presents and expect returns. It only works if you do it now, while you're still here, while the people you love are still here and can remember it with you. So that's my move. That's the one thing that changed everything. And it's not going to make my YouTube video go viral. It's not going to make you rich. But if you're like I was, if you're climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall, then maybe it'll make you wealthy in the only way that matters. I'm 75 years old. I probably have a good 7, 8 years left where I can do most of what I want to do, maybe more. I'm not wasting them. I'm not deferring them. I'm not saving them for some imaginary perfect future that might not come. I'm spending them on what matters. And I'm telling you, woman to woman, if you hear nothing else I say, hear this. Whatever you're sacrificing right now, it's probably not worth it. And the sooner you figure that out, the more life you get to actually live.